This is the Philosopher King 2.0. If you resonate with my outlook, I hope you'll like and subscribe. There's much to say and little time to do it. Western civilization is on a knife's edge. Prepare yourself. In a previous video, I showed that our angry population is the goal. The elite manipulate people into anger and then use that anger as a cover for their actions. They sell their actions by pointing to the anger as reason for swift, radical action. Naturally, they don't mention the fact that it was their manipulations that made everyone angry in the first place. To them, nothing would be worse than a happy, content, and thriving society. They would never get anything done. Our society is so jam-packed with fools, this technique works over and over again. I refer you to that video for more information. In this video, I wish to put a little more meat on the bones by showing how this works, and also to some extent provide evidence that I am not just making all this up. For your reference, I have put links to 4 authors in the description. Walter Lippmann in his book Public Opinion from 1922, Wilfred Trotter in his book Instincts of the Herd in Peace and War, and 2 of Edward Bernays' books, Crystallizing Public Opinion and Propaganda. But you will want to find his essay online called The Engineering of Consent. That article is the heart of this present video, and Bernays is the one I'll chiefly be speaking about. Edward Bernays was a public relations man, but he was more than that. He was one of the first to openly seize upon unfolding technologies in mass media and, in his words, act scientifically on a population. His method and outlook was taken up by a new generation after World War II. These people dominated all institutions from the 1950s to the 1970s. They are the ones that set the terms of engagement for all that came after that. Indeed, many of these people specifically stated the year 2000 as one of their key milestones. That, brothers and sisters, means that you and I are engaging in fights and battles that were predetermined for us by people who are now almost all dead or about to die. They remade the institutions in their own images, so that today's generation of, quote, elites, especially the bureaucrats and statists in general, continue to carry out their aims and continue to use their methods. To put it differently, if these people had not put their thumbs on the scales, today we would be debating and discussing the things that are important to us. Instead, they have us debating the things that are important to them. And I assure you, the two are not the same. Don't be fooled. The statists of today are generally clueless about why they believe what they believe too. They are often as stupid as the sheep they look down on. But there are some that are still as wickedly clever as their forebears, so we must be on our guard. In this video, I'm going to use Bernays as a way to dive into some of these issues. Believe it or not, Bernays' manipulations created realities that we still live with today. Have you ever heard the term banana republic? Bernays was forefront in the corruption of several Central American countries that led to the coining of the term. In other words, a banana republic was a Bernays republic. Is your water fluoridated? Bernays manipulated the evidence and public opinion to make this happen. Who hired him to do so? Was it the public health community? Nope. It was the U.S. companies that were generating fluoride through their manufacturing processes, and people were getting sick from it. Ouch. Think of the lawsuits. Bernays actually worked to encourage the smoking of cigarettes. He said, "You can practically get any idea accepted if doctors are in favor. The public is willing to accept it because a doctor is an authority to most people, regardless of how much he knows or doesn't know." So, using the money of industrialists, he persuaded the public health community, who are as gullible as anyone else, to promote adding fluoride to the water. Instead of the industrialists having to shell out money in lawsuits, communities shell out money to the industrialists for their fluoride. Genius. Do you think our food workers have hairnets because of some demonstrable public health objective? Nope. The manufacturer of hairnets hired Bernays to alter attitudes about them, and yada yada yada. Now the government requires hairnets. Just remember how easily manipulated the doctors and public health officials were when you think about their advice on how to manage a pandemic, right? But my point here is that the work Bernays did remains with us today. It was effective then, and it is effective now. So why do you believe what you believe about these issues and others? Do you believe things because of the evidence? Or because someone out to make a big buck or transform society in a particular direction paid, quote, engineers of consent, end quote, to work on your brain? Here's a quote from Bernays' article, The Engineering of Consent. This phrase quite simply means the use of an engineering approach. That is, action based only on thorough knowledge of the situation and on the application of scientific principles and tried practices to the task of getting people to support ideas and programs. We reject government authoritarianism or regimentation, but we are willing to take action suggested to us by the written word or spoken word. The engineering of consent is the very essence of the democratic process, the freedom to persuade and to suggest. The freedoms of speech, press, petition, and assembly, the freedoms which make the engineering of consent possible, are among the most cherished guarantees of the Constitution of the United States. I want you to notice a few things here. 1. Bernays believes he is acting on pure scientific principles. It is not about persuading people to a true position. It is about using techniques to obtain a position, any position whatsoever, regardless of its truth or whether anyone would otherwise have been interested in it. Secondly, he dresses up his approach by trying to wrap himself up in the flag. But then, in the underlined section, he gives the game away. He is only able to use his methods because it is protected by the Constitution. And that it is, but it is no less Machiavellian. What changed in the 1920s to make this engineering possible? In his article, he references several points that should interest you. 1. The vast expansion of the mass media made something possible in the 20th century that was not possible in the 19th century. In the 1800s, much communication was face-to-face, largely because that was the only way it could be. There were books and newspapers, of course, but few had the circulation or reach to affect a whole population. But, beginning in the 1900s, you had the telegraph, the radio, and the television. By the 1950s, when Bernays is writing this article, there was, for the first time, the ability to simultaneously reach millions of people. And by reach, I mean manipulate, by veritably drenching people in messaging. And he wanted the ideas people heard to be his, or of those who hired him. He said, "The United States has become a small room in which a single whisper is magnified thousands of times." At the same time, the public school system had made it possible to indoctrinate millions of people while they were just learning their ABCs. He states that engineers of consent have, and I quote, "the obligation to use the educational processes, as well as other available techniques, to bring about as complete an understanding as possible." Now you know why statists are so enthralled with compulsory public education and want to make college free. All you have to do is influence a small group of curriculum designers, and suddenly tens of millions of school children thousands of miles away are regurgitating what was stuffed down their throats without them ever knowing the difference. There is a belief that the most highly educated people are the most equipped to understand and solve our problems. In truth, the most highly educated people are the ones who are the most gullible of all of us, and most likely to just be simply parroting back what their brainwashers have burned into their minds. By educated here, I really mean schooling. A truly educated person, like a philosopher king, is definitely more equipped to understand and solve problems, but such an education can be gained without schooling. In fact, I would say your chances are better off getting a real education outside of schooling. Be warned, a genuinely educated person is a horror and an outrage to the statists, because someone who is really educated is much more impervious to indoctrination. According to statists, we should all be deferring to experts, and an expert is typically one with a lot of schooling. However, that only shows that someone passed their classes and tells you nothing about their competency. The notion that others could reasonably assess information and without schooling poses a direct threat to the progressives' goal to create the perfect managed society. They need to be needed, you know. There's a time and place for school, but like many other institutions, it is seen by the elites as just one more thing to take over and subvert. They rarely build their own institutions. They aren't smart enough to do that, nor imaginative enough to come up with their own ideas. They aren't bright enough to make their own society. But they are clever enough and ambitious enough to manage the societies that others have made. If you're looking for an analogy, search the internet for information on zombie parasites. That's them. According to Bernays, it is imperative for engineers of consent to study the people they mean to manipulate. I quote, "Research the public to learn why and how it acts, both individually and as a group." He actually has a section in that article titled, "Studying the Public." You see, they are studying us and have been for a long time. It is high time we start studying them, don't you think? This video is getting long, but a quick word on tactics is needed. Bernays has a section titled, "The Tactics." In it, he says, "Primarily, however, the engineer of consent must create news. News is not an inanimate thing. It is the overt act that makes news, and news in turn shapes the attitudes and actions of people. Newsworthy events usually do not happen by accident. They are planned deliberately to accomplish a purpose, to influence our ideas and actions. And there you have it. Combine this now with the techniques uncovered by the behavioralists about how to condition people in order to generate desired responses, and you can see why they rely so much on generating rage to accomplish their purpose. The rise of the internet is a wrinkle that the elites did not envision. I was there when the internet awoke. It was a time when people could speak freely and conduct themselves outside the reach of the technocrats. The technocrats responded by labeling it the Wild West and did their damnedest to bring it to an end. This they have accomplished through big tech, but it took them some time to figure out how to commandeer and co-opt the internet. Fortunately, if you have half a brain and any integrity whatsoever, there are still places you can go on the internet to escape daily 2 minutes of rage and actually learn something outside the reach of the engineers. But you have to be proactive. You have to do it, not just talk about it. There are so many takeaways from what I've talked about in this video, it would take another 10 videos to get to it all. Suffice it to say for now, you cannot believe what you see in the media at all. And I mean all of the media, the internet too. You'll have to work hard to find the truth about anything. But here's a tip. If what you are hearing supports an argument for any kind of action, you can be fairly confident that what you are hearing is either wrong or heavily skewed or possibly manufactured outright. They don't want to give you straight up news. You know, things that have happened that perhaps might be of interest. What did Bernays say? Newsworthy events usually do not happen by accident. They are planned deliberately to accomplish a purpose, to influence our ideas and actions. Be wise, Philosopher King. Be wise and alert. Like and subscribe, sign up to get notifications, and leave a comment if you wish. Thanks for your time. I am the Philosopher King 2.0, and I have spoken.